Welcome to Not Suitable for Democracy. I'm your host, Nick. On today's show, we have updates. Okay, so it's been a while since we've done an episode, but we have a lot going on and we are here to talk all about it. But not only that, we have a ton of new episodes coming out this week. We are upping up the volume from not one, but 2 episodes per week so we can get you more information even faster. So, what's to come? This episode will focus on behind the scenes on what's been going on, and then stay tuned for more information and context about the Voting Rights Act and what's happening with our democracy. On top of that, we're also going to dive in to the May 19th primaries that happened in Pennsylvania and Kentucky. So stay tuned for that episode. But even better, we're going to jump in to AOC versus the DNC for 2028. How are they going to be shaping up the electorate, and what does that mean for the Democratic primaries for President of the United States? Well, we have a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's get into it. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel, subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, and really following along where this journey has been in the year running. And while there have been ups and downs and breaks and hurdles, at the end of the day, we are doing the best we can to bring you more information, context, and value that helps you make better decisions, but also get involved in your local democracy. Because together, this is how we build a movement, not just where you live, not just where I live, but around the country. And now that we know we have a lot going on between now and November of 2026 for the midterms, we have even more work to do after that for 2028. So if you'd like to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Now, back to the show. First things first, if you're watching on YouTube, then you'll probably notice that the set design looks a little different. Now, if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that's because we officially moved to Woodside. Yes, after 11 years in Astoria, finally took the plunge and moved to another apartment in Woodside. Now, this wasn't an easy decision, and quite frankly, this was basically overnight. But isn't that life, where life throws you curveballs and you just do the best you can and work with what you got? And that's exactly what we did. So, that being said, now we will be organizing in Woodside out in Western Queens in New York City. But that doesn't mean we won't be visiting Astoria. It doesn't mean we're going to be ignoring all of the other races and local elections that are still going on. And that being said, with over 10 years of organizing experience, we are putting our best foot forward to make sure that we are on the ground in the new neighborhood, but also discovering what the best of Woodside has to offer. So if you have any recommendations on restaurants to check out or parks to go visit or activities and things to do, please let me know. I would love to hear from you, especially Woodside residents and native New Yorkers. Please let me know. I am looking to learn, and together, that's how we can organize and build community. Okay, so what does that mean for Not Suitable for Democracy? Well, a lot has happened in the past 4 weeks, especially since the last episode. With that said, we have updates. So first, we're going to be generating more episodes per week. Now that we have the opportunity to do so, we're going to get you more information faster. Number 2, each episode will be cut down to 30 minutes or less. This gives folks enough time to listen on their lunch break, listen on their commute, but also it allows us to refine the conversation and focus on a more narrow topic. Now, while we do have a variety of topics per episode, we're going to really just change the conversation a little bit. Now, if we need to have a conversation that's longer, like an interview that we can elaborate and really dive deep, that'll be when we kind of bump up the episode time. But we'll keep it short and sweet just for you. Now, lastly, we are going to also be changing things, not just from the podcast format, right, where it's great to have weekly episodes, but we are also going to be going live. Yes, stay tuned for more opportunities to interact with us on Instagram and TikTok. We have these channels and we're building a platform, so we'd love to now engage with our listeners and our viewers. And for anyone who wants to learn more about their local democracy, let's have that conversation so we can move our country forward together. Third change. Now, while we originally started this podcast over a year ago when things were very bleak after the 2024 election and in early 2025, now we know this is Trump's second term in office, so we were talking about what's not suitable for democracy, and our first episode was about getting money out of politics. So to stay true to that mission, right, but with a more positive spin, we are going to be focusing on news suitable for democracy. Yes, NSFD is still the name of the game, but instead of going negative, we'd like to keep things optimistic because we know hope and change can make a real difference. Now, I'm not saying we go the Obama route and fail to deliver on some of those promises, but we are going to make sure that you have some positive news that helps you throughout your day, both on Instagram and TikTok. So make sure to tune in for news that is suitable for democracy. Okay. Now that we're in Woodside, we have a lot to learn and a lot to discover, and I'm very much looking forward to what new activities are in the neighborhood, recommendations on bars and restaurants, but then even so, of course, meeting my new residents and fellow neighbors, right? This is going to be so much fun in the sense that we have a new opportunity to explore, discover, and just learn. I think that's what's really great about coming to a new neighborhood, especially as an organizer. These issues still impact us, whether you're across the sidewalk in a different district or even in another state. We know that whether it's housing, whether it's immigration, whether it's social issues and civil rights, these things affect us anywhere we go. What we can do is learn from each other, have those conversations, and really start to, kind of create those roots. Where my former roots have always been in Astoria for like 10 years. So jumping from Astoria to Woodside, I plan to bring those same skills over. So I would love to learn, what groups are out there? What can I discover to help really, build that community, address issues that need more uplifting and amplifying, let's say, and also fellow organizers in the neighborhood, Western Queens, Woodside, right? Please let me know and we can connect, and I'd love to have that conversation on how to best serve the community. So, with that said, I even did some prior research to moving here just so I would know who my new representatives are. Now, while I was in Astoria, I enjoyed, canvassing, door knocking, petitioning, getting out the vote for a lot of elected officials in that district. But now, coming to Woodside, I know I'll have new relationships, new bridges to build, and I'll get to learn how the current campaigns in election season are shaping up. So for instance, now I know that my assembly district used to be AD 34, where we were supporting Brian Romero. We're still supporting him, but technically he won't be, I won't get to vote for him since I am now in a different district. Now I'm in Assembly District 30, where the current assembly member is Stephen Raga, and there is an open primary to fill that seat. Now, in terms of State Senate, I'm still in State Senate District 12, where the two main candidates are Steve Raga and Abir Kawas. And Abir, if you recall, started in AD 34, running against Brian, and now Abir Kawas transitioned her candidacy to District 12. So, I'm very looking forward to learning more about the campaigns and really understanding who would be able to fill the shoes of former State Senator Mike Gianaris, who announced his retirement after many years in public office. And of course, being a resident of New York City, Zohran Mamdani is still my mayor, and of course, being in New York State, Kathy Hochul is still my governor. But now my member of Congress has officially changed. I was a resident and constituent of New York's 14th Congressional District with AOC, Rep AOC, for quite some time. But now, unfortunately, I have moved into Grace Meng's district in New York 6th. Now, as much as I'm new to the neighborhood, I do know a little bit more about Grace Meng. She is a corporate Democrat who does skew more moderate than progressive, right? I'm not thrilled about that. So just being clear, while she is, my current representative, it is primary season, so I have a lot to learn about the issues impacting this district, but more so, how can we fight for progressive change? So more to come on that, where we'll be diving deep into the primaries here in New York. If you are a voter here in New York, especially a registered Democrat, you have the chance to vote in the Democratic primaries coming up on June 23rd. We're about 1 month out from those primaries, so make sure to do your research now. I know Memorial Day weekend is around the corner, and folks generally, they drift away. They know that they've got bigger plans coming this weekend. But once Memorial Day is over, it is GOTV, get out the vote, and that is when you'll be seeing a lot more ads, a lot more canvassers, a lot more flyers. So make sure you do your homework because this will determine who represents you in your local government and including Congress. Coming to Woodside, I knew that this would be a huge transition from Astoria. Now, there are some differences between the two areas, but that being said, I did some little bit of research just to make sure I knew, kind of like the lay of the land and the demographics while making the move. So one thing I learned between Woodside and Astoria is that Woodside has about, upward of 80,000 residents, which is not as large as Astoria. I think Astoria is probably more than double that, but I knew I would be in a very diverse community. Now, Woodside is home to a large Irish population, and back in, let's say, the mid-19th century, like 1840s, 1860s, the Irish population was growing, where a lot of folks were immigrating from Ireland to New York City. And in the 1860s, that is when there was more development happening. So it allowed for more Irish Americans to then move to this area, which had farming and agriculture because of the woodlands, right? Woodside. So because of that, they were able to then, create more agriculture-oriented businesses here in the area. And from there, it wasn't until about the 1910s, 1930s that so many Irish Americans had come to Woodside. 80% of the residents were Irish. And part of what brought more people to Woodside was the construction of the 7 Line, which runs east and west through Queens, connecting it to Manhattan, but then also Queens Bridge. Now, once the bridge was created, this allowed for more traffic to flow into Queens, allowing stronger connection, but also for businesses to prosper. And it's these types of infrastructure decisions that really brought in more populations to the neighborhood, but also to Western Queens. So, fast forward to the 1990s, that is when we start to see more of an Asian population, where folks from the Philippines, they had started to really build up their presence here in Woodside. So since then, we even have a street nicknamed Little Manila that references Manila from the Philippines. Again, thanks to the strong influence of Filipino culture. Now, on top of that, we also have a huge Latino population where more and more folks were immigrating to Woodside since it is a working class neighborhood and there are small businesses in the area. And you can tell by the restaurants, right? You've got some Irish pubs that are still in the neighborhood. You still got some really good Thai and Filipino restaurants that are some of the best in the city. But on top of that, there are plenty of Mexican restaurants as well. So I am so looking forward to checking them out. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. I've actually shared a few call outs on TikTok and I got some great recommendations already. So please keep them coming. I would love to hear more places to check out, dishes to try, and even just places to go. So I'd love for you to reach out, not only here on YouTube, but also if you're listening in, make sure to follow along on Instagram and TikTok at NSFD_pod. I know that it's a diverse neighborhood, working class neighborhood, lots of great people in the area where it's definitely different from Astoria in the sense that, yes, gentrification has not hit Woodside in the same way it has hit Astoria. Whether that's good or bad to your point of view, the point is you can tell that the infrastructure and the buildings here are definitely older than they are in Astoria, where there's new development and new construction, coming in from Long Island City into Astoria, but it hasn't made its way yet to Woodside. Now, on top of that, we also know that the area has been very much under development in terms of getting more funding for infrastructure. You'll see the 7 train, especially at 61st Street Station, definitely is under construction now. And more of those upgrades need to be coming, right, in order to provide, cleaner, safer, and just better overall experience for those living in the area. Now, that being said, there's also 2 main avenues Woodside Avenue and Roosevelt Avenue. And both of them intersect right in the middle of town, which the 7 train goes along Roosevelt. Now, as you may know, Jackson Heights is right next to Woodside, going to the eastward direction. So that 7 line goes straight through, and you might hear a lot of hustle and bustle between the trains, the buses, the cars. So there is a high density of traffic. Now, on top of that, this also would cause concern potentially for air quality, right? If we know there's a lot of cars, we know there's a lot of sound, could be noise pollution, right? But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we are, organizing around climate initiatives that cut down on these emissions, but also provide a better quality of life for residents in Woodside. Now, that is part of city life, so we can only go so far, but these are things that could really improve the neighborhood, but also for everyone living in the area. We also know that it is a very dog-friendly area. There are so many dogs in the neighborhood, which is exciting to see. And we have our little guy, so we have been taking him out to the dog park, introducing him to new spaces and areas in the neighborhood. So if you know of any good places to take your dog, whether it's cool and shady for the summer or somewhere where there's not going to be a ton of snow in the winter, please let me know. I'd love to learn more, especially as we need to also protect our 4-legged friends and those who are part of our family. And I can't say this is my first time in Woodside, where I have been to the area several times in the past, whether it's, organizing and canvassing for other campaigns and political events, but even just, visiting friends and whatnot. So Woodside does have a lot to offer, especially the different restaurants, especially since its proximity to Sunnyside and Jackson Heights. And at the end of the day, my first impression has been so wonderful. There have been friendly neighbors, great residents. I've been talking to small business owners already. If I pick up a deli sandwich or, I'm at the local supermarket, right? Everyone is just kind of nice and just, respectful. And that's the best you can really ask for. And, New Yorkers get like the bad rep for always being rude and dismissive. But if I introduce myself and saying, hey, I just moved to the neighborhood, you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to help you out, make you feel welcome, and just give you tips and tricks and just things to look out for. And that has been such a great part of this transition. So, really excited to see how Woodside residents have been great so far. And, hey, real talk, I can't say I'm bilingual, where I do know a little bit of Spanish, but I can say that I have been getting to practice it a little bit more. So it's been great to have, more of that in-person, one-to-one interaction where I am challenging myself, picking up those Spanish skills, really trying to connect with people, right? And I think that's the best thing we can do, where, it would be great to see, more folks really be bilingual and really challenge themselves to try to connect and speak a new language, where that's what brings us together and builds community. Now, I know it's not always easy, and learning a new language can be, time consuming, but a few extra phrases can go a really long way. And while I'm not a language expert, I can say that it will make a huge impact on the world around you and the people in your everyday life. So I strongly recommend you try your best, but at the end of the day, do what you can, because that's all we can truly hope for. Now, all of that said, I am so excited to be in this new neighborhood. The transition has been, quite a change, but at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to see what we can grow and build from this point on. So if you'd like to follow along, make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Or you can follow on Instagram and TikTok. I use the same handle for both, so follow along at NSFD_pod. And don't forget, NSFD will also be used for news suitable for democracy. So again, get your daily dose of good news and how our democracy can be made better. Now, of course, we'll also have our critiques, things that are not suitable for democracy. But again, stay tuned for updates, fresh new content delivered daily. That way we can get you more information faster, so you can make even better decisions for your democracy. Or should I say, our democracy. So stay tuned for upcoming episodes. We're going to be talking about AOC versus the DNC, how the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court, and what does that mean for the midterms and future elections? And on top of that, what is going on in Michigan and Maine in the Senate primaries? Maine's primary is coming up, and Michigan's happening in August, but so much is changing already, and there's a lot to jump into. So make sure to follow along, please subscribe, and I cannot wait to share what is happening next. And remember, democracy is not suitable without you.